recorded live from Studio 12A in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. You're listening to the Josh and Friends Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Josh and Friends Podcast. I am your host. My name is Josh. And today we are here to rank the top Van Halen albums of the David Lee Roth era. And with me today are two very familiar guests to the program. And each of these two men are well-versed in this particular topic. I've spent many hours rocking out to these jams with both of these guys. So let's get this party started. Please give me a warm welcome to my two good friends, Mr. Lee Olson and Ethan McDonald. Woo! All right, gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are you?
Finally good. Yeah, that took a bit. I had some technical issues, as you guys are well aware, but the audience may not be by now. That's good.
Well, now everyone's informed. Everyone knows. And we're good to have you on, Lee. It's good to have you. Good to see you. You look fantastic.
Well, thanks. I mean, yeah, thanks.
You
This
bet.
just needs to happen more often.
Everything's fine.
This just needs to happen more often. The three of us, we could solve world problems or cause more. I don't know.
I mean, it would be both. It's fine.
Yeah. Agreed.
Good to have you guys on. Well, hey, I don't know how many times the three of us have had the discussion of who's the better frontman, Diamond David Lee Roth or the Red Rocker Sammy Hagar. And I think all three of us kind of like agree that David Lee Roth is the better frontman for Van Halen. Correct?
100% in agreement.
I mean, like Sammy Hagar, he's like always like, you know, he always likes to say that he has the bigger hits with Van Halen, which is, I mean, I guess technically true. He had the bigger hits, but David Lee Roth, you know, his albums sold more than Sammy Hagar. I think David Lee Roth, his 6 albums with Van Halen sold over 57 million copies. And
Wow.
Sammy Hagar, he sold 27 million worldwide. So that's why we've decided that we're gonna do the list with the top Van Halen albums of the David Lee Roth era. So just the albums where David Lee Roth is the front man. So
Which I think is, as we discussed, the default setting for the best Van Halen albums. It doesn't matter
Van
what
Hagar.
albums sell.
Yeah,
Well-
Van Hagar is a whole different band.
yeah, it really is. But like, you know, hey, look, I like some Van Hagar songs. There's definitely some good songs in there. But if we did this list, I think that some of the albums with Hagar, they would be, you know, lumped towards the bottom of this list, in my opinion. So, so
Absolutely.
that's why we've decided to do what we're doing. You know, the complete list of Van Halen albums, you know, we're just going to be doing the David Lee Roth albums. We're not gonna do the Sammy Hagar. We're not gonna do the Gary Sharon. I think we're gonna throw in David Lee
Should
Roth.
we take a departure and just do the top albums with Gary Sharon?
That'd be very short. We'd like, okay, well, that was quick.
And also, that's universal. I think it's universally known as the worst Van Halen album of all time, right?
yeah, definitely.
Like that's I don't think there's debate that, and it's not even Gary Sharon's fault. He's not a bad singer. It just
Right.
was a terrible.
No,
time.
there's like
It's not.
Extreme had some good songs, you know, but it's just, I don't know. It's just the way that.
Well, my opinion too is that Hagar was better when he was just Hagar. You know, Sammy Hagar's stuff solo was to me far more interesting than when he was even with Van Halen. And that's just my opinion. It's probably not a popular one.
No, that's popular. Like, I think a lot of people say the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
I love the album, especially, I mean, his peak is that Standing Hampton album, just loaded with great songs. It's a fantastic album. So, yeah, I'm not hating on Hagar too much, but now was I with you guys? Were you guys both, or were we all together for the famous Sam and Dave tour? I know I was with Lee. I know you were there, Lee.
Yeah.
Were you there? It was like when you weren't. So when Sammy Hagar and David Lee Roth hit the road, and they went out together, and I think they went on Stern, and they flipped a coin to see who would start off the show, because you want all the lights and stuff like that.
I think only one of those guys actually gave a shit about that for his ego, and it wasn't Sammy Hagar. I mean,
true story about it.
Yeah. No, Dave definitely has the bigger ego. That's for damn sure. But yeah. Okay, but anyway, so yeah, we're focusing on the David Lee Roth era, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna go over each album. We're going to kind of discuss the songs and maybe pick out some album tracks, some tracks that weren't necessarily big hits, but might be some of the best songs. And then what we'll do at the very end is then we'll pick out our top 3 favorite Van Halen albums, and we'll pick out a runner-up, just like we have been doing in the past. So let's start off with the first album right here. Van Halen 1978, February 10th, 1978. This is the debut album, and tons of airplay since it came out. It wasn't it didn't have big radio hits, but this song's known for, almost all the songs are huge classic rock staples. You have Running with the Devil, Eruption, Ain't Talking About Love, Jamie's Crying. Lee, what are your thoughts on Van Halen's debut album, 1978, entitled Van Halen?
I got a couple. First of all, 1978. Holy shit. We're old, and rock. When did rock die? Because if we're still referring to 1970, I think to me, Van Halen is some of the best rock on the planet. And it's weird to me that we have to look that far back. I can't believe that Van Halen was 1970. First of all, there's that. It's really old, and that's weird to me because it stands to me as sort of a definition of rock, or at least a lot of stuff around that time. So
it's about the best straight up rock there is, I would say.
Yeah. And it's strange to me that it's that old, that we're that old, that 1978 is when rock kind of started happening. I don't know. It didn't start, whatever. There were plenty of other conversations with that. But this album, I put it up there as far as debut albums go with Appetite. It's really great all the way through. And to have a band come out of the gates this hard and this fast and that innovative, I think was super amazing. I think it's got some great songs on it, and just it stands on its own as a great album. But then if you take into consideration that it's a debut album, I think it needs to get extra love.
Oh, it's insane. Ethan, how about you? What are your thoughts?
I just remember the first time I heard this album, man, it was the perfect marriage of just sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's the whole vibe of just the energy, the fun. It sets the tone too. It's but you could almost say that some of the David Lee Roth albums are kind of formulaic, because you've got the amazing song where there's this great intro, Eruption, right? That builds right into You Really Got Me. But it's it kills me now in the streaming world, because I'll hear Eruption and I can't wait till You Really Got Me, and then it goes mixes the playlist to some other song. I'm no, what I want to hear, right. I want to hear You Really Got Me. Yeah. So just the fact that you had such incredible musicality, and obviously Eddie takes the forefront, but man, Michael Anthony, all these other guys, his brother Alex on drums, they're all really sound good musicians, and the way they all kind of just blend and complement. And then just Dave being Dave, baby. Diamond Dave. He's just, the swagger is undeniable. And so every song, even I think the one that shocked me as a kid was how much Ice Cream Man just puts a giant smile on my face, and just what a great song. And you can just tell it's all about sex. And I was a young boy. I was 8 when I heard that. I'm hell yeah.
Dave got to be, there were big, huge party bands back in the day. Zeppelin is famous for their party antics, but not in your face on record. On record, they're kind of they have that mystique. They have that, kind of blah, blah. And then they got crazy in the hotel rooms afterwards. These guys were in your face. They're talking about partying. Their songs are nutty. Their concerts were they brought that first kind of just in your face party attitude. The songs are fun. Everything is just so perfect when you hear this album. And just to put this in perspective, because I want people to like understand this, because like a lot of the time that you don't get the idea of how like monumental an album like this is. But when this album was released, the top song in the country was "Staying Alive" by the Bee Gees. Right? So check this out. 5 of the top 40 tunes were Barry Gibb songs, like either by the Bee Gees or
Ethan and I are making the same face,
or with other people. So 24 of the songs are soft rock songs, and 13 are dancey disco songs. This is the top 40, right? Only 3 songs on the top 40 list would be considered rock, and that would be "We Are the Champions" / "We Will Rock You" by Queen, "What's Your Name" by Lynyrd Skynyrd, and "Long, Long Way from Home" by Foreigner. And those are like just, kind of like the top 40 hits, right? So now...
And none of those are good rock songs.
Well, and FM radio's obviously playing something different, which, by the way, I think these guys had a lot to do with the mainstream rock charts being created a couple of years later in 1981, I think it is. So... but I just wanted to paint a picture of the rock scene. So check this out. So these guys were more kind of like, instead of being like more blues based, like Aerosmith and Eric Clapton and AC/DC even, they're just starting to come into the scene. But they had like more like, heavy guitar riffs with fun lyrics, like I mentioned. But also they had like killer backing vocals by Michael Anthony. He had the high vocals, which complemented the, obviously Dave here, who's like all crazy. But so like the later part of the year, because this came out at the beginning of the year. Like this came out like in what? This came out like in February or January or something like that. So yeah, there were rock albums, but the closest thing I could think of as far as like rock that were released around this time were like Rush, A Farewell to Kings, which came out late '77, Kansas, Point of No Return, ELO, Out of the Blue. It's kind of like, rockish. Eric Clapton, Slow Hand. He's starting to get kind of slow hand, like with Cocaine, which Adam Carolla used to always go, "Is that song Cocaine? Like, is that literally like the slowest song about cocaine there is?" Cocaine. And so you have the Sex Pistols, who were punk, and then you had Cheap Trick, In Color, and Judas Priest with Stained Glass, which came out the same day as this, I believe, in February. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because these other rock albums, none of these other albums sounded anything like Van Halen, right? So I think this kind of like set the stage for, think of how many bands like wanted to be like these guys after this. Think how many
the whole hair metal.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how big this album was. It ended up selling over 10 million copies, earning it diamond status. So, Ethan, what's your you have a favorite deep track on this or an album track?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think the deep track is tough just because, like you said, damn near every one of these kind of became staples of classic rock radio. But I'd probably say, like, for me, but like I said, the first time I heard Ice Cream Man, and that's one that maybe doesn't get as much radio airplay, and it just made me smile. And it's just, I don't know, it really, really is a great song to me, because all the other ones are kind of big, huge ones, other than maybe like, Atomic Punk or On Fire, some of those things. And those are great tracks too. But
right.
I mean, how does your mind not get blown on any one of these songs by just the sheer talent of Eddie Van Halen, if nothing else? I mean, on any one of these songs, even when he's playing a straightforward riff, there's just something so tight and so just dialed in, man, like a guy in the zone. It's just, you get swept away.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, how about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, Ethan said it. There are no deep tracks on Van Halen 1. Everything is a complete hit. I mean, I know some of them charted differently, but they're all fantastic songs. So I'm not going to pick a deep track on this one. I'm going to say it's the first 15 seconds of the album when Running with the Devil starts, and you hear basically what sounds like a train coming at you.
So great.
And then it just lights up. I mean, it's like, I live my life like there's no tomorrow. I mean, they started their rock career declaring, I live my life like there's no tomorrow. And they went on and did it for decades. I'm picking that intro, the first 15, 20 seconds of Running with the Devil, as my deep track for Van Halen 1.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love, you can tell that the producer is Ted Templeman, who did the Doobie Brothers, right? Which is perfect to me because it's weird because the Doobie Brothers are so different, right? But the fact that he can take these guys and make them sound so perfect with the backing vocals on like Feel Your Love Tonight, and it sounds like that kind of production was like, oh my God, it sounds so good. It's almost like Beatlesque with like heavy undertones to it. So it's like a Little Dreamer, another classic example of that. You know, these are deeper tracks down there that you don't hear a lot, but they're like you said, Lee, they're just as good as like the hits, and the hits are fantastic. You know what I mean? Like Running with the Devil and Ain't Talking About Love. Dude, that guitar, amazing. So fantastic album. So moving on. After releasing one of the greatest debut albums of all time, the band heads right back into the studio. And this is where a band could normally really struggle, because isn't it the old thing where it's the sophomore slump, where, you know,
real thing.
You have your whole career, you know, before you go into the studio to write and make that first album. And then
they have a hit and they get some money and they get some cocaine and
right. And then the record company's like, whoa, we need some new action here. This is going good. We like this. So on March 23rd, 1979, just over a year, the band releases Van Halen II. Van Halen II, with notable songs Dance the Night Away and Somebody Get Me a Doctor and Beautiful Girls. Ethan, what are your thoughts on Van Halen II?
I mean, like you said, it's pretty incredible, just the prolific nature of this band, because correct me if I'm wrong, up until 1984, they're pumping out like an album every year and just going back to the studio. And I know it's probably something we'll touch on, but it's just incredible that you could come back with songs that are that good and that solid. And so like on this one, there's so many great tracks. You get a couple of those. I mean, this one I don't feel is nearly as strong, obviously, as the first one, but how would you? Like you said, when you've got years and years of material that you're going to put and pack onto that first album and make it incredible, but it's a pretty damn impressive sophomore album, I would say. For me, DOA is a song I really like that I don't think, probably got quite the airplay. But the big ones for me are the ones that were probably the most popular songs. I also like You're No Good, some of that weird stuff there that just kind of catches the ear. But yeah, it's to me not one of the strongest of their entire offerings, but it's still way better than most rock music that was coming out at the time. That's for sure.
Yeah. Lee, how about you, Ben?
I mean, I totally agree. It's it can't be considered a sophomore slump at all. It's a great album. They followed up strong. Not as strong. I mean, that first album was ridiculous. And I think Ethan hit it on the head. Like when you have basically years to put together all of your best material and you come out of the gates with it, with a band that good, of course, they're not going to live up to number one. But this one was pretty damn good. And I mean, deep track, I kind of like Beautiful Girls. I mean, I don't know how deep that is because it was still a hit, but I don't know. I just kind of dig it. It ended the album nicely.
The original skit with Chris Farley with Schmitz. If you like beer and you're gay, you're gonna love Schmitz Gay.
Yeah, that was great.
No, yeah. So the only thing that kind of bothers me about this album is I do like the cover of You're No Good, but I don't think that it should have kicked off the album. It's not like almost all the other albums, like they punch you in the face, right? With the opener. And that one's like so slow and it's just kind of, I don't know. To me, that's not like the best way to kick off the album. But as far as a deep track on this, one of my favorite songs, period, by the band is the song Women in Love. I love that song. And when I went to see them in 2007, have you guys ever seen Van Halen live?
Sadly, no.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I don't think I have either. Yeah.
Okay. Because I went to see him, with the reunion when they had Wolfie playing on bass or whatever, which is, he's Van Halen's kid. He's going to be good at bass. But yeah, Dave was like, we're doing all the old stuff. So basically it was like just seeing only old stuff, no Sammy songs or whatever. So that was kind of cool to me. But yeah, so that album, definitely not a sophomore slump. I mean, the album went on to sell 6 million copies. So can't really call that a sophomore slump, but overall solid album. I mean, for what do we always say? Like, for most groups, it's probably their best album. if you're comparing this album to like just a normal group, it would be one of their best albums, right? So, all right, let's move on. So yeah, that was Van Halen II. Next up on the list, we have released on March 26th, 1980. Just about a year later, the LP is Women and Children First. Notable tracks include And the Cradle Will Rock and Everybody Wants Some. Lee, what are your thoughts on this album, Women and Children First?
I mean, I think this is their worst album, but that says something about how good this band was, because this album doesn't suck. It's not super strong in my opinion. I think it sort of lacked any continuity. They didn't punch you in the face and keep punching you in the face, or just take a sort of unified direction with all the songs. But it's still a really good album. It's still really good. And, there are some rock songs on there that are classic for a bunch of reasons. My deep cut on that one, again, I wouldn't call it a deep cut at all. It's from Better Off Dead, as far as I'm concerned. The scene in Better Off Dead where the animated hamburgers come to life.
Everybody wants some. Yeah.
I mean, but that's because I think this is, to me, their weakest album. So I don't really have a deep cut on that one, because the rest of them are just sort of meh. They're not super impressive, but they're still fantastic rock songs. Like if we weren't talking about Van Halen, this would be a great album by another band. It would just be, but we're talking about Van Halen, who started off with 1, hit 2, and now they're at this one. So yeah, it's their worst album for my taste, but it's also pretty good. It's pretty good.
Ethan, how about you, man?
I couldn't disagree more. I mean, this to me is one of their best albums. I mean, for me though too, right? You guys know I'm more of like a hard rock and metal guy. Like this album kicks some ass. I'm sorry, you listen to Tora Tora Tora, and if you don't hear Dave squealing over it, I know it's one of those guitar kind of riffs. That sounds Black Sabbath-esque, man.
Right.
That's like Tony, I know. I mean, it's like it's dark and it's grinding, and then it goes into Loss of Control, where you're just losing his mind, and it's this unbelievable musicianship. But on top of like Romeo Delight's good, Fools is good. There's even their weird little songs they do on the B-sides, and like Could This Be Magic? It sounds like a drinking song from the sea in England. It's like fantastic, and just love that song. Even a simple rhyme is good. Take Your Whiskey Home. I mean, to me, this album, it's hard, because let's be honest, the first one's amazing and 1984 is amazing. But man, and I know I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag a little bit, but this one's up there. It's like it rivals those for me, just because it was so musically strong and just so badass. And I just feel like so much stronger than Van Halen II. Like they just came back, and I just love that whole idea of women and children first. Like
I love that. That line is like one of my favorite in the entire album. Sail away with someone's daughter.
Women and children first.
It's so fantastic. Yeah, that's by the way, that would be my deep track, because it's like you said, it's like there's all these like really heavy songs, and then it's like, what is it? Ding, 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 ding. You're like, what is this? So yeah, I would say that is like because it's, again, even if they're going like heavier, which this album sounds heavier than certainly the previous album, but you throw in like some fun, like, I mean, I still consider that a party song. You're like, okay, like they're rocking, they're getting crazy. This is what I didn't like about the Sammy era. It was kind of like almost, I don't know, even though Sammy's fun, like he's the Red Rocker, man. He's all about, drinking and partying and having a good time and, having, tequila and blah, blah, blah. And hey, man, come up on stage and have a shot and blah, blah, blah. Like the songs aren't as fun to me. And the songs there's always a couple songs on any Van Halen album, especially during this era, that are fun. And I think that's where the Dave thing comes in because, Dave, he has that kind of tongue-in-cheek thing, man, where he can get serious, he could get down, he could rock out with the best of them, but he also has that kind of silly, vaudeville,
Yeah, not take yourself too seriously.
Right. So I don't know. Yeah. So I saw, I heard an interview with Ted Templeman, and who's the producer. And he said that he would try to relax these guys in the studio, and by loosening them up with beers and stuff like that, because some of the recordings, the recording sessions, you go out on stage, you're having a great time and everything like that, but then you put a mic in front of someone's face, or it's like, okay, now play this perfectly, or sing this perfectly, and it's like, oh, this is a lot different than writing by myself or performing on stage. But he said that there's some bands that would try to portray like an image of, the party band or whatever like that. And he goes, these guys were the real deal. they're drinking, they're having fun. He goes, they were just like that in the studio. So I love hearing kind of like little tidbits like that. So the song Could This Be Magic? Nicolette Larson actually does the backing vocals on that song as well. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with
Nicolette Larson.
She had that song. She had a big hit with a Neil Young cover. It is gonna take a lot of love. It's a soft rock song, but anyway. Yeah. But yeah, so she, I think she died in like the 90s or something like that. But yeah, she was which,
by the way, since we're talking about death, how did Van Halen not fall apart being the true party band? How did they not run aground? They managed to keep it together, and you just said it, they were a true party band.
Yeah,
they were not fakers, and they somehow managed to hang on. It's great.
Stealing a page from Rolling Stones, maybe? I don't know. Maybe they were
right. I don't know, because most bands who are true partiers fall apart.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's move on to some more fun and exciting and happier times, like this album, Fair Warning, released another year later on April 29th, 1981. Key tracks on this one include Mean Street, So This Is Love, and Unchained. So, Ethan, what are your thoughts on Fair Warning?
Well, I mean, Fair Warning, obviously, Unchained might be one of the greatest Van Halen songs. I mean, it's just an amazing, amazing song, and Mean Streets is good. I don't know, Dirty Movies into Center Swing gives me a chuckle every time too. It's, once again, there's a lot of good swagger in this. Yeah. And it's got some really standout songs. But you're also at this point too, where I just wonder, when every flipping year, it's incredible. This is their 4th album in 4 years.
Crazy.
I mean, and you look at the dates, it's almost like almost a year and a month, if that, or a couple days. How they just keep going back to the studio. On top of, I'm sure they're touring the hell out of these things.
Yeah.
And by this point, they're so popular. They're hitting Europe. They're hitting Japan. I mean, they're going all over the place. So it's amazing to me that they could even produce incredible songs. But it's no surprise to me that I feel like Fair Warning, Diver Down. You could probably, like Lee made an argument, and he disagrees with me on even Women and Children First. You're going to get maybe some standouts and some stuff that's good and entertaining, and there's some still great musicianship in it, but not maybe as strong from start to finish, song for song. Yeah. And I felt that way a little bit about Fair Warning, to be fair.
Gotcha. Yeah. Lee, how about you, man?
I mean, I agree with Ethan. And actually, for me, Fair Warning would have been the worst album compared to Women and Children, except I really like Unchained.
Oh,
I think that's one of their best hard songs, and it rescues the whole thing.
So good. Like it's gotta be, it's gotta be in the top 10 rock songs clearly of the 80s. Definitely. I mean, it's so good. It's funny because it's not one of those quick, it's not one of those speed metal, like Metallica or what, but it's so slow, but it's so just deep and
chunky and just,
it's so crazy good. And the lyrics are fantastic. You have, Ted Templeman saying Give me a break, Dave. Guys.
One break.
Coming up.
Yeah, and the fact that they kept that in there, so
Right.
cool, right? Like
Right.
so awesome. So, yeah, and I heard him talking about that too, and he goes, "Yeah, that was real. Like we didn't, we didn't, just say maybe we should just say that. No, that really happened."
Right.
Imagine that happened a lot, by the way. It's like Dave's just screwing around and talking back to him. But yeah, no. How about deep tracks? You guys have a deep track that you are fond of on this album?
I like Hear About It Later. Hear About It Later just kind of reminds me like how many times we've all had women in our life, gentlemen. And occasionally we do things and we hear about it later. And like, I don't want to hear about it later. There's this part of me that there's just so many things that are so real life and relationship based too. And just like, I don't know, these guys always just make me smile. Their lyrics are always just fun and, relatively light and enjoyable. So yeah, that's one for me. I also, I'm done. We go. I'm stuttering.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, no. Deep tracks on this, I really only like Unchained. I mean, there are a couple of decent songs on this also, but I'm going to pick one that is actually probably the worst song on the album, but it's super fucking weird. And so I like it. Sunday Afternoon in the Park.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go with that. Like that, and that leads into the next one where it's like, it continues on with that kind of like that weird.
Yeah, it's just super weird. And it's like, all right, we get it. You guys had a contractual obligation to put so many songs.
Got a weird acid trip going on. Eddie's screwing with some sounds or something like that. I like the song Push Comes to Shove. I love that song. Awesome bass groove. Dave's lyrics. Great song. So if you haven't checked out that album, if you haven't checked out this album just for Unchained, that alone is just worth buying this album especially back in the day. But yeah, so all right, moving on to the 5th album in 5 years by the band.
Unreal.
Yeah, so we have released on April 14th, 1982. We have Diver Down. I don't have the album of this. I wish I did. But I don't have the album of this, but I have the CD. So Diver Down, and there's a lot of rock hits on this one, but it's mainly known for the covers, which are Oh Pretty Woman, Dancing in the Street, and actually 5 of the 12 songs on this album were actually covers. And Eddie Van Halen famously was not a fan of this album, saying that he'd rather have a bomb with one of his own songs than a hit with someone else's. So what do you think about this album, Lee? Diver Down.
I totally agree. Too many covers. 5 covers is too many for a band like this. I mean, maybe they were coasting a little bit, and the covers are great. They're done well. But I think it looked like they let off the gas pedal a little bit with this one. I still think it's one of my favorite albums because from beginning to end, it's really consistent for me. And I don't know. I think they managed to put together another crazy good album, and it's nuts that we even have to think about this as, somehow lesser than. Because again, if a different rock band had put this one out, it would have been their top album. But
Well said.
And I don't know. For this one, this is one of the ones where I actually have maybe my favorite deep cut out of any of these. And it's Little Guitars.
Me too.
Because the main thing that I love on Little Guitars is Alex's drumming finally comes through. It's totally like they kind of let him happen. And I don't know if it was a production thing where they finally let it come out or what. But and then, of course, Eddie is just super innovative. His guitar is super innovative on that. It sounds great. Dave's vocals are awesome. And there's kind of a secondary thing where it reminds me of kind of that era, kind of early 80s. It reminds me of like a Men at Work song, which sounds kind of weird to say, but I like it. I like the feeling of that song, and I think musically it's superb. I think it's awesome.
Right on. Yeah. Ethan, how about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest problem with Diver Down is the very thing that with the covers, Lee, and you did a good job of covering that. I mean, I can't blame them. My God, the 5th album, like we said, almost on the freaking dial for like March. Now we're in April. It's just crazy. But I think that's the frustration with me. I kind of totally agree with Eddie, but I understand why they maybe had to lean on covers simply for the reason of how do you have the time and the energy to continue writing new material. When it comes to the songs, obviously those stick out. I mean, Where Have All the Good Times Gone is just such a sweet, kick-ass kind of party song. It's kind of fun. But for me, I think my favorite deep cut is the one you played at my wedding. Big Bad William, Big Bad Billy, Sweet William. Like, that one just makes me smile. And Sarah still loves it because she thinks that one all the time, obviously, from the wedding. And
that's great.
Because clearly, yes, I don't know that I was as tough as this guy, but clearly I was kind of a strange monster.
That is funny.
My wife made me into a much better human being. I think
was that requested, or is that something?
No, you played
out?
that. You pulled that out. I didn't even know that song existed. I think, Josh.
That is so great. That is great.
It was just so fun.
It is like you, though. It really is. Like, it's like, like this guy was a pissed off, angry dude, and then he met Sarah, and he's like, and William, William.
So it's like doing those dishes and mopping up that floor and like, doing it happy. Like, yeah, this is getting me laid. I'm like, yeah.
That's so great. That's awesome. Yeah. That is great. Yeah. No. Personally, what's funny is I know that they had a big video with Pretty Woman. I think this was the problem we were talking about earlier with this album. Is by this time they were touring and they were contractually obligated at this point in time to they're like, look, we need something, man. They're like, how about we put out a single? They're like, we want an album. We're like, geez, man, like who else is pumping out albums like this, right? So that's where the covers come in, because you could fill up like an album with covers, right? What's funny is I'm not a huge fan of, when I listen to Pretty Woman, it kind of sounds like, to me, Pretty Woman on this album sounds like it's like they're not having, which is weird, by the way. It sounds like they're not having a lot of fun doing Pretty Woman, but Dancing in the Street is fantastic. Like, I'm not even a huge fan of that song originally, and it's been covered so many times, but their cover of that song is so different sounding. And, this is where Eddie's like really starting to really experiment with stuff, like different sounds and everything, like Lee was talking about. It's like a lot of different kind of different sounding stuff. But I think that this is kind of like I think Lee might have mentioned this too, but this is kind of like a warm up to their next album. And I think that they got Alex and Eddie's dad to do the clarinet on Big Bad Bill, which is it's like that song is such a weird, great song. But the fact that Eddie or David Lee Roth suggested that they get their dad to do the clarinet, like what? Can you imagine like Sammy doing that? No, Sammy's not going to put like weird, like he'd put a beach song on there or something like that, like, Cabo Wabo or something like that, but he's not going to put like some weird show tune or something like that on there, but that's what I like about that album. And another deep cut that we didn't talk about is obviously Little Guitars is probably my favorite deep cut, but Secrets is a fantastic song on this album. One of their best, and I think their best actual songs are the songs that are not covers. Secrets, Little Guitars. I think those are the best songs on here, and those are not covers. So dive her down.
Can I just take a moment and picture what it would be like for a young Eddie and Alex Van Halen with their dad playing clarinet?
I know, right? Like,
and then I imagine Ferris Bueller never had one lesson, and Eddie's like, I got to grab a guitar, and Alex is like, I'm getting a drum kit. We got to get the fuck out of here.
It's so weird, right? Oh, it's just a fantastic, awesome, just amazing. All right. Okay. So here we go, guys. Dave's grand finale of the 80s. And it's the last official album of the band's original lineup. Released on January 9th, 1984. The album is 1984. And he had the big songs Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher, All Wait. The album actually reached number 2 on Billboard's top 200 album chart and remained there for 5 weeks at number 2. The only album that it could not pass is Thriller.
Yeah.
Thriller. Now think about that. That's recognized as, well, it's the biggest selling album of all time, right? So the fact that it couldn't get past that, it's pretty impressive. I mean,
it's kind of okay to finish second to Thriller.
Right. So, which, by the way, Eddie's actually on.
Yeah, beat it.
So yeah, he was having a good year. Now, this is without a doubt the absolute peak of the band's popularity. It included their highest charting single with Jump. This got massive airplay on MTV. And also, just like the first album, sold over 10 million copies. Ethan, what are your thoughts on the album 1984?
Where do you begin? I mean, let's be honest. This is the album that probably cemented our love of this band, because I'm guessing most of us were introduced to this band probably for the first time with this album, just based on our age and MTV. And first off, look at that album cover. I mean, is that not one of the most iconic rock covers of all time?
So good.
It's so good. And then I'll be honest, when I see the little video movie that is Hot for Teacher, sit down, Waldo, and everything with that. And then there's this gorgeous woman dancing. And now it's my life, because my wife's a substitute teacher and she's gorgeous and I'm hot for teacher. I mean, there's not a, once again, it's like they also came back around, because this is, to me, the closest thing to the debut album in terms of just huge hits, and there are no weak songs, and every part of it's awesome. And hey, guess what? They actually got a year off. So, hey, imagine, give Eddie and his innovation and that band and amazing musicians and Dave time to write lyrics, and you're going to get really good music from start to finish. And so this album is absolutely incredible, from even just the cool synthesizer-based stuff, even Jump in the intro there, once again, just showing the creativity and just the musicality. Because I know like Eddie and I think Alex both were trained as like classically pianists, I believe, by their dad first, before they kind of switched the move when they're back in Holland children. And you just start to see all that talent. Because, man, I'll wait. I know it's one of their big hits, but to me, in terms of a deep cut, even though there's that guitar leading in that song, it's just such a well-produced, just, I don't know, almost mesmerizing, just cool song. I mean,
I think Ethan said it. This is a ridiculously good album from beginning to end. It's, and I got to be honest here, when we were sort of tasked with this, I didn't want to like 1984 as much as I do. I know that it's a good album. I tried to let the other albums come through. This is just an amazing album. There isn't one bad note on this entire album all the way through. It is that strong, starting with the synthesizer and then Jump, which is super innovative, because again, Eddie Van Halen was known for his guitar work. He was a virtuoso guitar player, and they worked some of that synth in, they worked some of the other stuff in before, but to start your, newest studio album with just the sort of synthesizer, and then the first song that you really get into is basically a synthesizer song. I mean, it's got guitar, obviously. And then of course they just punch you in the face with Panama. I mean, it's it's a ridiculous, great album.
It's insane. Yeah, no, I just tagging on that. I remember singing the song Panama over and over when this first came out, because it's just like one of those, it's like an anthem song. It's like,
it's an anthem.
Panama, and I was, I remember where I was too. It was Dykstra Park, over by the footbridge.
yeah.
And I remember my babysitter lived across the street, and I met this kid who was showed me, I think he played this album, and then he played Shout at the Devil. And that was kind of like my introduction into rock music. So that was like, this album's just so, it's like has that spot in my heart where it's just like, you guys are right. Every song, it's like a perfect rock album. It's almost like a, and it starts, it flows so well too. Like, it's not just a bunch of songs, just, like singles that are thrown onto an album. It sounds like you're listening to a full album, all together. So
it does. Sorry, I'm laughing at Ethan's cat coming out of his
crowd. Both cats are coming out.
Oh, both cats.
The brothers are both here. Yeah, so I've got Chubbs and Chicken right over here.
Chubbs and Chicken?
Well, they're originally it's a story. That's their nicknames.
All right, okay. All right, yeah. And by the way, I love how Michael McDonald co-wrote I'll Wait. The lyrics of that, I guess.
That makes sense, maybe, why it sounds so like chill, like.
I love that song, by the way, though. It's so good. It's like the way it like builds up. It's so good. God, it's so good.
It is.
But the success of this album it was so huge. It was monstrous, and the fact that like almost all the videos were huge too, right? I mean, you had Panama Jump, Hot for Teacher, yeah. And I mean, it happens with bands like some of these bands where like they have one of their biggest albums, and at the very peak of their career, like the Police, Synchronicity, and Bridge Over Troubled Water. Were they foreshadowing there? No, but it's like one of those things where you can have the success can ruin a band, right? And it's a shame. But if you had to pick one that is a standout that wasn't a hit song, what would you pick on this album for a deep cut?
I mean, I can say I'm breaking the rules again. There are no deep cuts on 1984. there just aren't. So I'm gonna say it's the breakdown in the middle of Panama. I reach down between my legs and ease the seed bag.
Oh, Johnny Racich.
That's the deep cut is
yes,
the John Racich version.
Oh, that's awesome. Shout out to Johnny Racich.
Yep.
Big Jabita.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. Ethan, how about you, man?
I mean, like Lee said, I don't know that there's many deep cuts, but there's just something like I've always been a legs man, like my athletically. So Drop Dead Legs has always painted a picture in my head. I just love that song. So
me too. That's my pick, man. I mean, if I had to pick a song that's not that you don't. By the way, I hear all of the songs from Van Halen 1, like here and there on the radio. I don't hear all the deep cuts on this album, which is a shame because this album's solid. I mean, like we're all talking about it's the peak of the band essentially, and this also sold 10 million albums. So I don't know what. Maybe it's just maybe it's probably getting played now. I don't know where. Where do people listen to music now? I don't know. Spotify?
Yeah.
Wait, are they still on Spotify?
No, they are.
Okay. All right. So guys, this next album in the catalog.
We really count this.
This is so the next one on our list is wait. Oops, wrong. Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, the next one we have is we could save that one for Sammy Hagar episode that we talked about. Ethan's like, I don't want to be part of that.
I wouldn't have a whole lot to say going.
It would be a shorter episode.
Made love to? Like, what is this?
Okay. So we're just going to skip ahead 27 years in the future. 27 years later, they return with David Lee Roth. And this album is the only album that doesn't have Michael Anthony on bass. Instead, it features Eddie's son, Wolfie, on bass and backing vocals. And that album is A Different Kind of Truth that was released on February 7th, 2012. And it featured songs Tattoo and She's the Woman. Lee, do you have any thoughts on...
Yeah, I have a thought. I didn't know that it was an album. I really didn't. I thought I did some homework on this, and we were talking about all the albums with David Lee Roth, and didn't know this one existed. Probably could have gone my whole life without recognize. I'm looking at the track listing right now. I think I'm fine without this album. I've never heard it.
All right, so I guess we'll move on to Ethan. Ethan, how about you, buddy?
I piggyback on what Lee said. Like when you put that out there, like, huh? And I think I remember hearing about something like, oh, they're getting back and making an album.
Heard this album at all? Like,
well, I went and listened to it as homework, and I'm like, okay, there's some cool riffs in here, but I'm like, no. Like to me, it wasn't. I don't know. It felt like, and I get it. Like artists got to make music and they want to keep making art and stuff like that. But to me, it's just like this is not the same. Like there's some cool riffs and. I'm not trying to knock any songs down, but it's not vintage 80s Van Halen party.
Right.
I mean, it just sounded like some old men trying to recapture some magic that's probably that's gone.
Okay, I guess I'll pick up the heavy lifting on this one.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to.
So 7 of the album's 13 songs were actually demos. from the 70s and early 80s. And they reworked these tunes. And you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. I went into this when this first came out, I was like, oh, really? Like, all right. And I listened to it and I listened to it again. I was like, you know what? This sounds like classic old Van Halen, and not because obviously it's Dave, but Dave's vocals are clearly not what they were and when this came out 2012 or whatever. But this album, it's heavy. It's a pretty heavy album for Van Halen, and I think that it's just too bad that this album came out 30 years too late, because it's one of their harder rocking albums. And I think that, they try to, do what they can with Dave's vocals. I mean, at this point, he's just, he's older. He's an older guy, so,
lived hard.
Yeah. So the song Big River is a song that's it's track number 12 of 13. And that song is killer. That song is an awesome song. So if you guys get the chance, and Stay Frosty is kind of like, Ice Cream Man rewrite. And You and Your Blues, it's a decent song. Tattoo, it's okay. But anyway, yeah, this album is just, again, 30 years too late. But for me, I think it's like a nice farewell, because this is their last album. So,
well, you posed a good argument that makes me want to go back and maybe check that out with a little different ears. So yeah. I appreciate that, Josh.
Yeah, and for me, honestly, it's going to be a chance to go back and
listen to it for the first time.
Yeah, because I didn't know this album existed, and I did not think there were any more David Lee Roth albums out there. So even if it's not up to par, right, it'll give me a chance to go back and listen to it. I think that'll be cool. I'm not kidding when I say this. It's better than a couple of Hagar albums, in my opinion. Especially like the last couple. But
I don't doubt that.
Better than Van Halen III for sure. All right, so now let's. I guess we're gonna do this now, guys. So it is time to pick out our top 3 Van Halens of the David Lee Roth era, and probably not gonna have this on there, so we could just put this aside.
Yeah.
So all right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick out our runner-up, like we usually do, like what we think our 4th best, and then we're gonna do our top 3. So, Ethan, we're gonna start out with you, buddy. What is your top 4 or your 4th place runner-up album?
I think for me, the runner-up would probably have to be Diver Down. It's a great album, and there's some good stuff, and given the covers and whatever, there's some fun stuff. It's just for me. Like I said, between Little Guitars and Big Bad William is kind of being those deep cuts there that you said, and just like songs that are amazing, clearly stand out. And then some of the other stuff that's just, got the big radio play. And for me, that's my number 4. It's that my honorable mention.
Awesome. Lee, how about you, man?
I think it's 2. Van Halen II.
Van Halen 2. We got Van Halen 2, baby.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not. It just got overpowered by Van Halen 1, but I think it's a good album. I think it's good all the way through. I do like Dance the Night Away.
Oh, it's great.
That's just a cool, rad song. I don't know. I'd put it 4 out of the 6 albums that I recognize as David Lee Roth.
Right. I like how we're picking out 4 of 6 albums.
Right. 7 if you count the one that you brought to the table.
That's true. Yeah. All right. So I think that with my list, I ended up choosing the albums that I found myself going back to on a regular basis. So, with the albums that I reach for when I want to hear songs by the band the most. And with that explanation, my runner-up selection has got to be Diver Down. And Diver Down, I almost made it my 3rd. But I just know that, I don't know. The cover, there's a lot of covers, and some of the covers aren't the greatest, but some of the covers are fantastic. And the deep cuts, this has probably my 2 favorite deep cuts on a Van Halen album. So, and again, fun party band. You didn't get that with Sammy. I mean, he has his, feet in the sand, but you wouldn't know that listening to the songs. But anyway, all right. So moving on to the number 3 album on our list of the top Van Halen albums of the David Lee Roth era. Lee, what do you have sitting at your number 3 spot?
Well, you said it almost made number 3 for you. It did make number 3 for me. Diver Down.
Diver Down.
Yep. I mean, it's got too many covers, but even the covers are good. Yeah. It's a really good album all the way through. And it's top 3 for me. I don't really have a ton of things to say about all. It's just
we already explained it. Yeah. You don't have to explain too much. We already went over it. Ethan, how about you, man?
Women and Children First. It's got to be my third. Like I said, that album, I just love it. And like, I know it doesn't have as many big hits as others, but to me, it's a very complete album, and just the rocking riffs. But like from everything, like we discussed before, from, everybody wants some. I mean, come on. What song doesn't scream just like depravity and sex? Like everybody wants some. I want some too. Like, from that to like great songs like our one that Could This Be Magic? And just, I'm telling you, Lee, I challenge you, go listen to Tora 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 and just listen to that Black Sabbath just ripping right into Lost of Control. I mean, and that song's wild, but it's just so damn fun.
That's a good call with the.
I mean, maybe what I'll do is I'll couple it with the album from 2012. I'll listen to the album from 2012 and then Women and Children First, and I bet it comes off as a goddamn masterpiece.
I bet it does.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, number 3 on my list is, it's got to be the same as Ethan. Same as Ethan here. Women and Children First. I think that the album. It had everything from the awesome photo of the band on the front to the 1-2 punch of And the Cradle Will Rock and Everybody Wants Some to the, Romeo Delight and the fun natured, Could This Be Magic? And it closes out with the super strong, In a Simple Rhyme, in my opinion. I think that's a fantastic song. And
Michael Anthony's bass in that song, Josh. Awesome. Michael Anthony's bass in that song is incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so that's my number 3. All right, so we are down to the last 2. And gee, I wonder what these are going to be. But who knows? I don't know. But Ethan, if you say 2012's Different Kind of Truth, I will be just blown away. All right. Okay, so Ethan, what is your number 2 selection?
It's got to be 1984.
1984.
Which clearly makes it obvious what my number 1 is. And that's a tough one because, like I said, talk about their most complete albums from start to finish, where we both arguably said, all 3 of us said, there's no real deep cuts because every song on there is amazing and well done. But for me, as good as this is, and it's amazing as it is, and it's probably the pinnacle of their success, it's still not as genre changing and as powerful as their first. So, I mean, that's where I say. So obviously, I guess that lets the cat out of the bag. My number 1 is Van Halen 1. So I think I'm going out of order there, but for those reasons that Van Halen 1 is because hairband, does it exist without Van Halen? Does it ever, that whole fun sex, drugs, and rock and roll? I mean, they created a whole new genre of music that dominated everything in the 80s. Like you said, Josh, made the necessity of creating a rock chart for the first time. I mean, just things that are just unbelievable, and just everybody wanted to be Eddie Van Halen. I don't care who you are.
Yep.
I mean, come on, Bill and Ted's. The whole thing.
I think what's his name said that, like Dave Mustaine said that, he goes, I thought David Lee Roth was a god, and Eddie Van Halen was just. I mean, come on. I mean, you see that guy play guitar, you're like, what on earth? It's like like you said, like Back to the Future. You're like, what? Am I seeing an alien here? What is this?
Absolutely, Beethoven with a guitar, man, just like a musical genius.
Right. So 1984 is your number 2, and Lee, what is your number 2?
I mean, Ethan and I are going to flip flop here. I did not want it to be this way. I started out this thing. I should have been objective. I really was trying to be. I did not want 1984 to end up number 1 on my list.
It ruined your night over here.
I mean, I don't know why. But I mean, and again, I think since we're down to 2, I think the answer is we got to explain both of them. because they're both really, really good. And I think the reason that I didn't want to pick 1984 as my number one is because that's like picking Metallica's Black Album. It's obviously a great album, but it was also their most popular, and I don't want to pick that one. I want to be more nuanced. I want to be more of a music snob and say, of course, it's the pinnacle of their rock sales, but it can't be the best, right? Because everyone else likes it. That's what it was, though. So number two, I mean, Van Halen 1. God, it's so close. It is, right? Album.
It's like it's so close. Yeah,
they're just so close. But as I was listening, I really whittled it down to those two, and I put each album in my headphones, and I was listening to Van Halen 1 when I was working out, and then just before I came on here, I shoveled snow, and I was listening to 1984, and I had to just concede. 1984 is it's the best album they've ever done, in my opinion, but there just isn't one bad note. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, that's we let the cat out of the bag with our number two pick and the number one, but it bears explanation because these are so close. I didn't want 1984 to be better than Van Halen 1, and it just barely is. And that's saying something because Van Halen 1 is fucking ridiculous.
It's tough, man. It's tough, but it's it could go either way sounds like with all of us. I guess I'm right on with Ethan on this because my number two is 1984, and like you both said, it's about as good as a rock album can get. I mean, hey, it has two of my go-to karaoke songs on it. You have Jump and Panama. Come on now, come on, and Hot for Teacher. I mean, accompanied by you can't not listen to that song if you're our age, especially, and not picture the video. I mean, you can't. It's impossible, right?
I don't feel dirty.
Waldo. Yeah, and I mean, and like Ethan mentioned earlier, Drop Dead Legs. You have Top Jimmy. These songs are fantastic, right? So there's it's another reason why this album sold 10 million copies like Van Halen 1. And that's because it's a fantastic album. One of the best rock albums of the entire 80s. So, yeah. So, number one for, it's very, you already kind of like let the cat out of the bag, like you said, or let the cat off the couch, like Ethan over there. But, so, Ethan, you said that your number one was Van Halen 1. You already said that. And Lee, your number one is 1984.
Right. And I think you're the tiebreaker, obviously. You guys wow. But here's what's crazy. Here's what's crazy is I think with almost any other band and any other sort of group of albums, it would be a contentious argument. Like, oh, how could you pick that one and not this one? It isn't. They're both ridiculously good albums. I wanted Van Halen 1 to be number one. So I think there is no wrong answer here.
Yeah, no, it's that's why we do the show, man. It hurts our brains, but we have to do it. We have to do it. And yeah.
Can't puss out and say it's a tie.
No, exactly. Yeah. So and I love the fact that we have, different albums as number one. I said it before, it is a tough call. The number one album for me has got to be Van Halen 1 because it is, it's their debut album from 1978. Think about that. I mean, I guess if I was kind of like doing just the music, I could have gone the way of Lee, but I'm kind of like bundling everything in together with the history and the influence and, there's 0 weak tracks on this. There's not really weak tracks on 1984, but I mean, this album, it's insane. Like how good the songs are and the cultural impact on this album. It can't be understated. And it's not only the best Van Halen album, but it's also one of the greatest debut albums of all time, which that'd be a tough list, by the way, because there's a lot of great debut albums, but it's hard to follow up a great debut album, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Any final thoughts on the Van Halen countdown, guys?
I'm gonna say I'm just pumped, Josh, that you and I had we matched for the final.
Isn't that
doesn't
crazy?
happen very often, but that's
No,
pretty
yeah,
wild.
we did not trade notes. We did not
No, we
trade
didn't.
notes. That's crazy. Yeah. So
Yeah, you guys matched right down the board, and I'm actually excited that there's an album that I haven't heard. I mean, that's to be able to go back and rediscover some Van Halen I didn't know was out there. Obviously, and I think for me it's super easy to tell why. I violently stopped listening to Van Halen in 1998.
violently.
Yes. Because Josh, you were witness to that.
Yes,
I bought that album and it was so bad. I just
I've
declared
never
Van
seen
Halen.
Just for the record, I've never seen you that disgusted in my entire life. And Lee bought the album on the way to my house.
I've heard this story.
And right when he gets to my house, he goes, "Hey man, you want to take a road trip?" And I go, "Yeah, where are we going?" He goes, "I'm returning the CD." And I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, this CD, it's a pile of shit." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, you want to go back to?" And I go, "Yeah, I'll go back." He took
and I bought it at one of those places that was like also a used disc place.
warehouse.
And I walked in there and I was like, "Hey, I need to return this." And I'm like, "Well, you already opened it, you can't return it." I was like, "Well, then I'll sell it back to you." And he's like, "Well, it's a used CD." And I was like, "I just bought it, 38 minutes ago."
We'll give you $6 back for the $20.
Totally. I can give you $6. I think I paid like 23 or whatever it was. I mean, it was the day it came out. Like I was super stoked.
Because wait a minute, didn't this literally just come out this morning?
Yeah, it did. No, it had come out that morning. And so I went back and he's like, "I'll give you like, $6 for it." And I was like, "Done. Get this out of my life."
Oh my God.
Wow.
And that was it. That's where Van Halen. Yeah.
You are
I mean, it was
fired
that
up.
bad. It really was that bad. Right? I mean, that's the worst album ever, right?
It's pretty bad.
The worst Van Halen album of all time.
It was bad. It was horribly mixed. The songs were bad. Sharon's vocals were drowned out. The whole thing is a mess. But
and what about the one that Eddie Van Halen did the vocals for? That might be the worst rock song of all time.
I don't know. But I gotta say, I think that when you guys go back and listen to that album, you're gonna hear that you can tell that they're demos of old songs, right? A lot of these are demos from old songs.
The 2012 album, right? You're not advocating for the 1998 album.
No, God, no.
Okay,
The 2012 album, and on top of that, I think that Eddie Van Halen, he almost sounds like he's re-energized with his son being in the band, and you could tell,
Makes sense.
like it's like you could feel that energy. And again, the weak part about the album is you're not going to be able to fix Dave's vocals as much as, whatever. They are what they are, but it's still, dude, it's rocking, man. For a Van Halen album, it's pretty tight. So I trust me, I don't ever say that about like new bands' music, but that one is a different kind of truth. No.
Saw what you did there.
Yeah. All right. So, hey, there you have it, guys. I want to hear everybody's opinion on this. I hope people had fun listening to our discussion about Van Halen. And now we want to know what you think. What are your top 3 favorite albums of the David Lee Roth era? And what are your favorite deep cuts, like we mentioned? Some of these deep cuts on these albums are some of the best songs by the band, in my opinion. It's kind of like listening to like a Beatles album. You're like, this was not a hit, but it's like one of the best songs on the album. Or listen, I'll take anything, any comment you guys have, I'll take it. So, I mean, like, are you one of these people that just, you're not a big fan of the David Lee Roth era? You prefer the wimpy ass Van Halen? Yeah? No, I don't know. Maybe that's you. I don't know. Maybe you're a chick. Who knows? I know chicks like the Van Hagar area a lot more than the.
Maybe
I want to see one. I want to see one comment from somebody about that album from '98. I know it doesn't actually fit the discussion for David Lee Roth. I want to see one person advocate for that. I want to know who they are, and I bet it's a Russian bot.
Well, we'll welcome any comments, and especially from Lee. He wants to hear about the 1998 album, Van Halen III. So, guys, thank you again for coming on for another music discussion. It's a blast. It's always a blast, and we're gonna have to do it again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, all right, man. For Lee and Ethan, my name is Josh, and I just beg all of you to keep on rocking. And as always, thank you for being a friend.